Welcome to the Female Stoic podcast. My name is Stephanie Poppins, and I am an advocate for literary empowerment. That means I believe the examples set by the literary masters can broaden our life perspective, create increased self-awareness, and empower us to overcome the obstacles we encounter here in the 21st century. By listening and referring what we hear to Stoic philosophy, we can foster a strong sense of self and navigate the world more effectively. This podcast takes the form of both discussions and meditations. And if you like what you hear, you might consider looking me up on my socials, where I post empowering videos every day. Or you may like my classic audiobooks and original stories available on my website, newworldbooks.uk. Happy listening. So welcome to the Female Stoic podcast. Today's episode is entitled A Broken Child's Stoic Sacrifice, and we will be looking at the work of Charles Dickens, specifically The Old Curiosity Shop. This is a celebratory episode. As you know, I'm sure, the Female Stoic won the Women Podcasters Award for Education 2026, so a huge thank you for all that voted. It has meant so much to me. Thank you. So let's go on to the topic of the day. This Old Curiosity Shop is something that I've not recorded so far, but it contains a recurring theme in the work of Charles Dickens, which is the suffering of children with regard to broader social issues of the time. And today we consider the Stoic sacrifice we made as children. And just to note, similar stories, for example, Oliver Twist, are available on Insight Time as chapter tracks or shortly as a remastered audiobook wherever you listen to audiobooks. And if you like this content, please be sure to comment and share. It helps support this educational endeavour, which benefits people all over the world who would not otherwise have access to such education. So let us begin. The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens. If you don't know the story, Charles Dickens originally published this in weekly instalments between April 1840 and February 1841 within his own periodical Master Humphrey's Clock. It was released as a complete standalone book after this. A sentimental Victorian novel, it follows little Nell and her grandfather, who are forced to flee their London shop when his gambling addiction drives them into poverty and the clutches of the evil moneylender, Daniel Quilp. Nell and her grandfather flee London to avoid Quilp, travelling as beggars across the English Midlands, encountering both cruel and kind people. This book focuses on innocence, corruption, greed, and the stark contrast between the industrial city and the pastoral countryside, as did many of Dickens's works. It is known for its intense melodrama and sentimental scenes of suffering that deeply moved Victorian audiences. And to go back to the theme of the day, Stoic sacrifice. Little Nell, the tragic protagonist of the Old Curiosity Shop, sacrificed her youth, financial security, personal comfort, and ultimately her life in order to protect and care for her gambling-addicted grandfather. At just 14, instead of experiencing a normal carefree youth, she took on the role of caregiver and protector. She lost her home and belongings when his gambling obsession forced them into destitution. She gave up all comfort, security, and voluntarily chose to become a wandering beggar to keep her grandfather safe from predatory moneylender Daniel Quilp. So it's a sad tale. As with many Dickensian novels, this depiction of suffering is an attempt to educate the lettered classes in the suffering that really went on in Victorian England. So what I want to do is take a look at the impact of suffering from an anecdotal note, because as we know, many children suffer, perhaps not to such a great degree and not making the ultimate sacrifice, but indeed they still suffer. Many of us have suffered. So let's consider this. Imagine lighting a candle. What is the purpose of this candle? Why does it exist? Consider the conditions that this candle requires to stay alight and the conditions that might prevent it from staying alight. A candle requires 3 basic elements to stay lit: fuel, the wax; heat, to melt the wax and vaporize it; and oxygen. For a healthy, steady flame, the liquid wax must be drawn up the wick continuously to meet a steady supply of oxygen in a draft-free environment. What am I saying here? When we are children, we rely on the elements created by others to sustain us. If these are not forthcoming, ultimately we suffer. And as a result of that suffering, we come to understand the elements must then be provided by ourselves in order to survive. Dickens said in one of the prefaces to his books, "The sun himself is weak when he first rises, and gathers strength and courage as the day gets on." He is using the imagery of the rising sun to illustrate human potential and gradual self-mastery. He is telling us here to embrace the beginning. Just as dawn casts a pale, cool light, early efforts or new beginnings often start with limited power or uncertainty. We know this. So he's advising us here to persevere through that doubt, with an understanding that courage and capability are not instant. They must be cultivated over time through persistence, effort, and the passage of time. He's suggesting we trust our growth, our early struggles, and ultimately the sacrifices we make as children are temporary, and they do not need to dictate the potential of our life. Dickens says, "Such is the difference between yesterday and today. We are all going to the play or coming home from it." This quote captures the unpredictable nature of life, comparing our shifting circumstances and changing perspectives to the contrasting moods of a theatrical performance. I'll say that again. Such is the difference between yesterday and today. We are all going to the play or coming home from it. Whether we find ourselves in the thrilling anticipation of opening night or the quiet reflection of the journey home, Dickens here is reflecting on just how quickly everything can transform for us. So let us consider what this means to us from a Stoic point of view. Growing up requires trading this boundless wonder, energy, and present-mindedness we have for the responsibility, self-awareness, and pragmatism of adulthood. It's painful. We make a sacrifice. While on one hand we gain independence, we inevitably leave behind unconditional freedom, innocent idealism, and the vivid, unburdened curiosity that makes experiencing the world for the first time so magical. It's painful. It provides sacrificing several deeply foundational parts of our early life. It's very difficult because we are called to move away from living in the present as children, and we are called to move away from forgetting mistakes, but actually remembering them, bringing the negativity into our present day experience. As we get older, we sacrifice the innocence for the knowledge that we have a past, the knowledge that there were difficulties, the understanding that it wasn't all as innocent as we believed at the time. We learn to live with the knowledge that some things could have been done differently. When we are a child, we are free to try on and discard different hobbies, passions, ideas, personas without any long-term consequences. But when we are an adult, eventually what's demanded from us is specialization, consistency, and this cemented idea of who we are, whether that be dictated to from externals or not. As Stoics, we choose to focus on translating these into sustainable traits rather than focus on the loss itself. We understand we have to trade the innocence of childhood for a deeper capacity for gratitude, purpose, and meaningful connection. There's no avoiding it. This loss is the ultimate trade-off for our freedom, our character, and our service to the greater good. And this is the key here, to understand that sacrifice, as painful as it is at the time, is never a true loss. It's a rational exchange. It's the trading off of temporary comforts, personal desires, or material attachments for the far superior lasting goods of this freedom and this understanding of our virtue. It takes a long time to recover from that sense of loss and accept that. But when we employ this mindset, we shift from this place of victimhood to one of active choice, which is the ultimate freedom. Because if we allow the past to own us, of course, we are always chained to something else. And as you know, as Stoics, what we're seeking to do is protect our inner peace and so remove externals from the equation. And of course, the past is an external. Marcus Aurelius noted a virtuous action is its own reward. We are not losing. We are simply exchanging something of a lesser value, which is the comfort we sit in when we think about the past, for something of ultimate value, which is our character today. Epictetus argued that true freedom comes from detaching ourselves from those externals, those things outside of our control. And as we know, the past is outside of our circle of control. If we give up those externals, we secure our inner tranquility. But we still acknowledge that ultimately we have paid a price for that. And what we seek to do is come to terms with the payoff. The trade-off, we have sacrificed something and we've gained something else. And how do we really accept that trade-off? It's all about where your mind is focused. We have to determine what are the indifferents. We have to apply this dichotomy of control to everyday life, to everyday thoughts. It's a daily endeavour, as I always say, but this is Stoic survival. The overriding theme in this book, The Old Curiosity Shop, is children being made to age before their time. The reason this cuts so deeply with me is because in my time as a school teacher, I experienced many such stories. I supported many children through the devastation of having addicted parents, narcissistic parents, emotionally unavailable parents. The list goes on. When we have that knowledge that actually our parents are weaker than us, it is devastating. There's no getting away from it. And when we are children, we carry this burden without really knowing what the burden is. We just understand that we are called to action before we are emotionally ready to fulfill that action. Our security is shattered. And this is the pain that we hold on to when we need to create an understanding of why we feel so sad. Because there must be a reason why we feel this way, right? But what I've learnt is when we manage to practice amor fati, when we manage to accept that that's just the way it was and there was nothing we could have done about that, and we work every day to remind ourselves of that, we can actually be free from the chains of that. In many of Dickens's works, he was voicing the unvoiceable. These are the stories people do not want to talk about. They're unpopular, they're hidden, and especially in the case of children, it is their job to hide the truth, because why would they face the truth? They may sacrifice their own voice in order to keep the truth hidden. So in conclusion today, if we're coming to terms with weak, emotionally immature or inadequate parents, it's a difficult but a liberating mental shift, and something I would argue we all need to do at some point. Some of us have more extreme stories than others. If we look at the Dickensian stories, they're the worst they can possibly be. Of course, that is done for dramatic effect, but it doesn't negate the value of real stories. When we come to terms with our past, we have to go through a period of mourning. The parents we deserved but we never had. And this, once we allow ourselves to pass through that and come out the other side, we understand that period of mourning was necessary. It wasn't something we should shirk or we should avoid. It was necessary, for then we can allow it to resonate outside of our inner citadel. It allows us, when we pass through that stage, to drop this exhausting expectation that anything would ever change. Again, this radical acceptance, amor fati. Children whose families and homes do not provide consistent safety may develop ways of coping that allow them to survive and function day to day. This is the sacrifice they make. They may be oversensitive to the moods of others. They may be always watching, hypersensitive to try and understand mood changes, what's going on, and what the adults are feeling and how they are likely to behave. They will try to predict changes. And these learned adaptations have to be able to be mourned and then let go. That is the child's stoic sacrifice. Children do not ask when they're denied, they just retract, they hide their disguise. So the stoic sacrifice is being able to, firstly, be strong enough to sacrifice their childhood. They are called to do something they wouldn't choose to do. And secondly, mourn the loss of that childhood and then let it go. Epictetus said, "What disturbs men's minds is not events, but their judgments on events." And that is what we are seeking to do today. We are seeking to remove the judgment of that event. Accept it happened. Accept a period of mourning is necessary. And accept then that remains outside of our inner citadel as an external, something we can't change. Of course, we understand our lives today are a reflection of the way we've learned to remember our childhoods. And it's our job today to celebrate our capacity for stoic survival. Today is a celebration of the fact that we did it, and we are now learning how to make sense of that and fully recover. And as we always have a journal task, today's task is to list the ways in which you have grown and benefited from your childhood stoic survival. Okay, keep listening, and I'll see you next time on the Female Stoic podcast. See you next Friday. Bye. Hey, Stephanie here. Thank you for listening to the Female Stoic podcast. It is an honour, and I just want to say I really appreciate you being here. It's amazing the power of women in literature and the stoic messages they have to share. Please, if you can, return the favour by spreading their words and sharing this podcast far and wide so more of us can benefit from their wisdom. And don't forget to leave a review if you like what you heard. See you next time.